Welcome. I thought you might want to know something about me and my beliefs at a 30,000-foot level if you were going to support me as mayor. So I get up early every morning, I make some coffee, and then begin to ask some softball questions like, what is the purpose of my life? What is important? What do I really think is the truth? I've been in a decades-long conniption fit with the Catholic Church, the church in which I was born and raised. So I pretty much missed the memo on Oscar Romero. A few years back, I read a small book on him and ran into this quote. The gospel is the great defender and proclaimer of all the great fundamental rights of the person. The fundamental right to food and water, shelter, protection, medicine, education, work, rest, freedom, respect, dignity, fullness of life. I jumped up, exuberant. This, in words of one syllable, was exactly and precisely what I believe. Further quibbles aside, Romero led me to rediscover the 7 social teachings of my girlhood. 1, every human being has inherent dignity. Poverty, hunger, and injustice prevent people from living in this dignity. 2, we realize our dignity and rights in relationships with others. 3, we have a right to participate in decisions and activities, but when our needs cannot thereby be met, government must intervene. 4, we stand with others. What affects one affects all. We are one human family, regardless of any differences. 5, we take up the cause of the poor and vulnerable as our own. Poverty, its forms and effects, is unjust. 6, we have a right to participate in those institutions necessary for human fulfillment, such as work, education, and politics. 7, we have a duty to responsibly care for the earth's resources, which are for the good of all, not just for the rich. Is this radical? Is this extreme? Is it partisan? It's out of scripture. It's out of literature. Dr. Maya Angelou said, quote, I am human, therefore nothing human can be alien to me, end quote. So how does it happen that some have become diminished, isolated, and dehumanized? How did they become other? Become a giant dung beetle, as in Kafka's The Metamorphosis? It's out of my personal and lived experience. In 2008, I was in the hospital with a trifecta of critical health threats. I did not feel good at all. In walked this young, petite woman doctor who, even in the darkened room, somehow was intensely illuminated. She pointed out I was very sick. My first reaction was, good God, I'm in the hands of a 12-year-old. But then I felt it very keenly. I had a choice to live or die at that moment. I could relax my grip on life's struggles and fade away, or I could try. It was very evident what she wanted from me, life and my participation in regaining my health. I sighed internally and somewhat exhaustedly agreed to this partnership. I have never doubted that Dr. Shukri Osman and my willingness to be in a relationship with her saved my life that night. Human dignity, relationships, responsibility, participation, the unjustness of poverty, and care for the earth. These are such consequential values that they must never be trivialized with vapid, meaningless, surfacey messaging. All words, no passion, no actions, no revenue to back up the actions, no showing up for the hard work. Moving in closer, we're here now. Let me state the obvious. 2020 has been emotional, to say the least. What haven't we all been going through? A global health retreat, a financial collapse, then the igniting of a new civil rights movement, and now the resurgence of the virus. We all know this. We have left the shore. We are only midstream, headed for more change and a transformed landscape, only some of which we can do anything about. What are some of the change areas? How can we, through them, make our lives better? There are many, of course, but let's start with housing, transportation, preserving big trees, and diversity, equity, and inclusion. As an aside, you do see how these priorities are different aspects of the same core issues. Housing opportunities affordable for all is a racial issue. Having it near transit is key to coping with our impending climate collapse. The footprints of expensive mansions demand the removal of big trees, without which we will not be cool and our air will not be safe. Despite the average income of at least $100,000, approximately 10% of Lake Oswego students are on free or reduced lunch. The majority of our citizens enjoy the police policy of no call too small, while a minority experience the police as threatening, intimidating, and harassing. Finally, it is important to affirm that the city of Lake Oswego is not out there at City Hall. Electing me does not automatically define the change. To crib Gandhi, I must follow you if I am to be the mayor of your city. Our local government is us. It's us voting, participating, acting in elected offices, and being aware. I dare say it is proclaiming, defending, and procuring fundamental rights of the person. So very briefly, housing. Certainly select groups benefit from stable and low property taxes so they can get into and continue to live in their homes. The upside of this is naturally occurring affordable housing, meeting the needs of the 60 to 100% median income group. However, this stock is being demolished to make way for very, very large and very, very expensive houses, which fill up the lot, require the removal of big trees, and generally shelter fewer and fewer people. One of the most regressive moves of our council was not to institute a demolition tax. I would have supported that if it had gone towards affordable housing, but to designate it for park maintenance. We have a lot to do to meet the needs of the citizens already living in our city. Build a Metro Clackamas project on Boones Ferry, institute some level of inclusionary zoning, and enact a construction excise tax to help fund affordable housing would be good for starters. Transportation. For too long, we have viewed transportation as simply a matter of congestion, connectivity, and pedestrian safety. The pathways, safe routes to school nibbles. But the red alert is the absolute global imperative to drastically reduce greenhouse gas emissions from the burning of fossil fuels. Progressing at all will take city cooperation with the other governmental entities and personal relationships with their staff and electeds. I am, at present, the only counselor who is a member of or an alternate to the state, county, and regional leadership committees on land use and transportation. I show up for the hard work. Let me give you some examples of fatuous talk and no action. The extra transportation infrastructure caused by and is supposed to be paid by law by the developer causing the new impacts. Recently, the majority of the council, including my presumed opponent, voted to reduce these charges by 70%. Beat the drum all you want for pathways and safe routes to school, but then he gave away the funding. Beat the drum of economic development and fiscal responsibility, but this vote lost the city about $80,000 from a large development on Cruiseway and Boone's Ferry. Why should the cost of future, but not the profit, be placed on the backs of residents who have already paid through taxes, rates, and fees for the existing infrastructure that the developer just waltzes in and gets for free? Jeff Goodman and I were the two minority votes. You can be sure I will raise this revenue fairness issue upon becoming mayor. Preservation of big trees. It is long overdue that we are grateful for and respectful of our big trees. The bigger the tree, the more significant it is to stormwater management, shading, habitat, and air. Changes must be made to the development code because the city tree code is an abysmal failure in preserving these big trees. Whatever tree is in the footprint of a proposed development, unless it is the one and the only tree on the lot, is cut down. Boom. Somewhere, the idea has taken root that a big tree can be remediated with a small tree or a small fee. It cannot. Yet, yes, people have property rights, but far more importantly, we have a climate emergency, and protection of our environment must be a higher priority. The single thing that Lake Oswego can do to address climate change and has complete control of is to save the big trees. As mayor, just as councilor, I will be the Lorax. I can assure you this is a hill I am prepared to die on. Diversity, equity, and inclusion. Dr. Alicia Moreland Capuya, in the textbook Training for Change, taught that being trauma-informed builds greater capacity for empathy, improves our cultural responsivity. Quote, empathy is about the capacity to imagine, to feel, and to make a demonstrable shift as a result of that feeling. Systems change when people change, end quote. Her prescription to impact systems for change: get people into the feeling space. Here in Lake Oswego, I suggest we acknowledge and really feel our common humanity. I suggest we unite to change our harmful systems, which are presently based on some have, some don't have, quote, power, esteem, status, and/or equal access to societal resources, end quote. At the moment, there is a great appetite for replacing these unjust systems. As Dr. Moreland Capuya suggests, let's listen to the human sound of Trayvon Martin's father grieving, not the sound of our many words about many things. Then let's act. In short, little moving forward is about me. I do have a vision, which I'm sharing, but it will happen because we all agree to act in solidarity for the common good, for our common home. We commit to generosity of spirit. We validate each other's experiences. We accept abundance. There is enough for everyone. We are joyful and grateful for the natural beauty of our city. We actually prioritize meeting our needs. We bring everyone along. We leave no one behind. In closing, recently Mike and I watched Avatar: The Last Airbender. What leapt out at me at the end was the fact that while Katara was a waterbender, her brother Sokka didn't bend at all. Only Aang, the 12-year-old monk and an airbender, would have the eventual capacity to bend in all dimensions: earth, fire, water, and air. But this didn't matter. It wasn't necessary that everyone was able to bend. Together, they had all they needed to confront the exploitative Fire Nation. This is what I meant when I started this campaign a year ago. We together are formidable. It was the first thing that came to mind and is what I leave you with now. To say there is no conflict out there right now on the local issues is to put your mask on over your eyes instead of your nose and mouth. No one who has a stake in keeping our city essentially an affluent enclave is simply going to wave us by. The shared societal values we started with are extremely threatening to them. We can see this in their desperate attempts to control, to divert, and block our new path forward. And maybe even more deceptively, we can see this in their use of vague, progressive terms, with no specific energy behind any of their proposals, and worse, no revenue. Now, they could pick us off if we are isolated and without backup. If, however, we stand together, confident, prepared, and strong, together we will proclaim, defend, and procure our fundamental human rights. That's why we're here. That's what's important. Call it radical, call it extreme. That's what I really think is the truth. And I invite you to embrace it as well. We together are formidable.